Hi, in this week, we are going to look at the case study of automating the audit sampling. This case is adapted from the EY Innovation Mindset RPA case studies. Audit sampling is an important step for many audit procedures to select a sample of items to test. There are several ways to select an audit sample, such as random selection, systematic selection, and haphazard selection. In random selection, each item is chosen randomly and entirely by chance. That means each item has the same probability of being chosen. In systematic selection, we select sample by certain criteria. For example, if I want to randomly choose 3 students from our class, I can ask each one of you to first give me a random number of your own choice. And then, after I get the random number from every student, I can announce to the class that I choose the 3 students who first give me the random number of 5. In this setting, when the students come up with their random numbers, they do not have any expectations of how I will choose the sample. So the process of they coming up with the random number is totally random. But then I can use the criteria, for example, the student who give me the random number of 5 to select the sample. So this is an example of systematic selection. The haphazard selection is a sampling method that does not follow any systematic way or random way of selecting participants. For example, to get people to participate in your project or your interview, you can go to a busy street and stop people who pass by. The haphazard selection is usually used when it's very difficult to obtain the sample, so you usually choose the most convenient way to obtain the sample. So in the earlier example, to get the participants, you can go to a busy corner where many people pass by to get the participants because it's easy. However, the haphazard sampling gives little guarantee that your sample is random and can represent the entire population. And in this section, we're not going to drill down into the different sample selection method. However, we're going to automate some of the sample selection process. The sample selection process is a very good candidate for RPA because it is a task used for many audit procedures and it is mundane and error-prone, meaning when humans perform these tasks, it's very easy for them to make mistakes. So we want to automate this procedure to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of this process. In this case study, you are going to develop an automation that can perform the following procedures. First, you are going to identify the key transactions or key items based on their transaction amount. And this is an example of the systematic selection. So if a transaction has the amount above or below our predefined threshold, you include it as a key item and it's going to be our selected transaction. Next, from the rest of the non-key transactions, you are going to draw a random sample and then include it in our selected sample. This type of automation could be used to prepare samples for substantive testing, such as the sample for confirmation procedure and others. In this case study, not only will you automate the sample selection process, you will also document your decisions so that another auditor or regulator can easily review your work. Here are some project details. In this project, I will provide you with 3 files. The first file is called population data. In this population data, you will have all the raw transactions. So you can see that each transaction has an ID and also amount. So as I mentioned earlier, if the transaction amount is outside the required threshold, we include it as a key item and select it in our sample. And for the rest of the population, we are going to draw a random sample. And the second file is called Sample Selection Wizard. In this file, we provide you with the parameters to be used in the sample selection process. Most importantly, you are going to use the upper limit and lower limit of the transaction amount. So if a transaction has the amount above the upper limit or below the lower limit, it will be regarded as a key item. And you are going to use the number of random transactions, here 25, to draw the same amount of transactions randomly from the non-key items. The third file is called working paper. So in the working paper, there are two tabs. The first is the sample documentation. Here, you are going to take a screenshot from the sample selection wizard and paste it to the tab of sample documentation, like this. And then the second tab is called sample selection. In this tab, you are going to copy and paste the selected sample in the sample selection section. For example, after we draw all the key item transactions, you will insert these transactions here. And then you will also need to insert the randomly drawn non-key items below the key items. Besides that, you also need to fill out the details of the sample. For example, the client name, the period end, the number of transactions drawn, and their total dollar amount, and upper and lower limit. Here is a flowchart of the automation. So once we start our automation, we are going to first obtain the sample selection criteria from the sample selection wizard. They will be used in the following procedure. Next, you are going to document the sample selection criteria in the working paper, which means you are going to take a screenshot of the sample selection wizard and then paste that picture to working paper. Next, you are going to use the upper and lower limits obtained from the sample selection wizard to select the key items from the population data. And you are going to draw a random sample from the rest of the non-key items. Then you need to document or insert these selected transactions to the working paper. And lastly, you need to fill out the summary statistics or the details of the sample, like the client name, the period end, and the number of transactions and total dollar amount. And then the automation comes to an end. Now, let's follow the other videos and start our automation.